Brakthia Howell, Brakthia Shai, Brakthia Howell, Brakthia Shai, Brakthia Howell, Brakthia Howell, Bashim Shai, Bahashim, Regard Kodash, double honor to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone True Well. Salutations to the hopeful elect out there, you Akim to Sadakim, that do this thing the utmost truth and sincerity. On the Pre-Shaman, this week's topic is going to be entitled, Never Trust Thine Enemy. The inspiration for this lesson comes from the current situation that's going on right now, and Ecclesiasticus, the 12th chapter and the 10th verse, which I'm going to go ahead and read. Ecclesiasticus 12 and 10. This is found in the Sirach, the Slaka. This is found in the Apocrypha. Apocrypha means sent away, hidden, meaning you're not going to find this in the current, certain modern day versions of the King James Bible, but it is in the original King James 1611 Bible. So it is a part of the Bible. The book of St. John, the 10th chapter and the 25th verse, has Yahushua keeping the feast of dedication, which was put in place by Judas Maccabees. That story is found in the Apocrypha. This is Ecclesiasticus 12 and 10. Never trust thine enemy. The Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, you have to understand that you have an enemy. All right? And that enemy is starting with the so-called white man and these other nations, and they are against you. Let me go ahead and prove that. Let me go to Psalms 83. Let me go to Psalms 83. This is the book of Psalms, chapter 83, verse 1. A song or psalm of Asaph. Keep not thy silence, O Yahweh, Washem Yahushai. Hold not thy peace, and be not still, O power. For lo, thine enemies make a tumult. So the enemies of the Lord are also the enemies of the elect. All right? The elect of the nation of Israel has enemies, man. And the Bible is telling us who to beware them, who we should beware them of, who of them we should beware. All right? Our people as a whole have enemies, but guess what? As it stands on this side, a lot of our people has joined the enemy. Scriptures in Proverbs, the 11th chapter, tells us, though hand join in hand, the wicked shall not go unpunished. It says, for lo, thine enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head. So the enemies of the Heavenly Father hates the Heavenly Father and his people. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people and consulted against thy hitty ones. And how they taken crafty counsel against you. They do different laws, legislations, and enact different things that you think are for your benefit, but really are to your detriment. And prime example of that is welfare. And why do I bring up welfare or social programs? We're seeing that the government used that to destroy Native Americans, so-called blacks, Latinos, but now they're using it on damn near a lot of states, man. All right, putting people with this lockdown situation to look for a handout, and it come across as free money, right? It come across as free money, but really what that does now, it is widening the gap between rich and poor, because that's what welfare does. When the government restricts how much money you can make and take, what they do is, if you're not in a certain gap, you can't make any more bread. And these small business owners, all right, that trusted in this place, or let's say they personally might have not trusted in this place, but the thing was passed down to them, right? Their family passed down this business to them. Well, guess what? It doesn't matter. Either way you do it, you're getting wiped out, because look at what happened in LA. They extended the lockdown another 3 months in LA. All right, Governor Newsom. Okay, next till July. And what's fucked up about it is Newsom is like, yo, look, you got 70% of places that are open right now, which is a complete lie, because the places that are open are like major chains. And if you are open and you're not running 100% capacity, what's the point? You're damn near burning more bread to stay open than anything. So this is done deliberately. He gives you these bills and contracts you think that are helping you, but really that's just creating a larger wealth gap between rich and poor, man. Prime example, this $3 trillion stimulus that got shut down, it might pass in the House because that's all Democrats, but it's going to get shut down in the Senate, which is Republicans. Maybe. I don't know how this thing is going to play. But pretty much what the stimulus does is, if you give people go to work based on incentive, and if the government is giving you more money to stay home than to work, then why the hell would you go to work? You know? But just like minimum wage, what that does is the small business owner that got employees, he can't pay them. He can't match, you know? Minimum wage wiped out a lot of small businesses too because they can't match. Like, for example, if you were a Costco, right? A Costco could afford minimum wage because all they got to do is just raise prices. But a small business owner, he can't do that, so that wipes his ass out. And that's what they're doing with these different bills and contracts. You think it's for your benefit, but what the so-called white man is really doing, right, is pretty much creating more and more of a welfare state, a welfare-based system, man. A system that is completely reliant on the government, full of just the rich and the poor. That's all they're doing, you know. But we don't give two hells, man, because ultimately this place, America, is slated for destruction. It says they have taken crafty counsel against thy people and consulted against thine hidden ones. They have said, come and let us cut them off from being a nation. And how do they do that? All right, they put a veil or a covering upon the children, the sons of Israel, and call them Mexican, Puerto Rican, Dominican, Trinidadian, Jamaican. All this veil, this covering, anything but what you truly are is Israelites. They'll call you anything under the sun, and anybody could be Israel but you. You know, them so-called Jews over there in the land of Israel, they accept anybody being Israelites except you Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. You're not the lost tribes, right? You're not the tribes that fulfill Deuteronomy. That's what they'll tell you. Because they know if you know who your power is, okay, then they can't rule over you with their bullshit. They have said, come and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. And that's what these nations have done, man. All right, but guess what? The Most High, pursuant to the book of James, the 4th chapter, put us in remembrance. It says, the scriptures in James tells us, I should therefore put you in remembrance. It says, for they have consulted together with one consent, they are confederate against thee. So these nations, that's how come they have that building, the UN building. It's in the shape of a monolith, and monolith means one stone. And in the United Nations, is every nation but you, man. You don't have a say-so, man. You Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, you are oppressed daily. And the so-called white man keep pushing out these bullshit contracts, legislation, bills. Was that Isaiah 10:1? Writing these grievous prescribed contracts and legislation that just further oppresses our people. You know? It says, the tabernacles of Edom and Ishmael and Moab and the Hagarene. So Edomites, the so-called white man, they was there first. All right, them Arabs, all up in the ghettos, selling you shit that they don't eat. Look at all these nations, man. They sell you shit they don't even touch, man. The so-called Chinese, you go to so-called Chinese. When you go to so-called Chinese restaurant, why are they not eating their food? You know? They don't eat that shit, man. The shit that they sell, they're not eating no fried rice and chicken wings and all that. They're not eating none of that madness. You know, they give it to our people. None of those foods have any type of nutrients in it or nothing like that. All that stuff this food system that the so-called white man got does nothing but break you down, man. Fast food and all this bullshit nonsense, man. And they make it dirt cheap. And then the things that's good for you, oh, you want that? Well, you got to pay $5. It's organic. You know, why should God-given natural food from the earth be so expensive, but the chemically shit is cheap, man? Because the chemical stuff is to destroy you. And they make herbs that the Lord produce naturally damn near hard as hell to get, man. And now it's to the point where this devil, he didn't create all this madness and labeled it organic. Organic is just a tagline for more money, man. They have shit like organic seedless grapes. How could those seedless grapes be something organic? So that don't really mean anything, man. Organic spinach don't last 2 weeks. You know? Expires in 2 weeks. Look, you know what I'm saying? This bullshit, man. Of Moab and the Hagarenes. Gebel and Ammon and Amalek, they go them so-called Jews, and the Philistines with the inhabitants of Tyre, so the so-called Africans. All right. Yes, you have Negroes and Latinos and Native American, primarily Negroes, the tribe of Judah scattered amongst the Africans, but the natural African is different from the so-called Negro, man. That's in that book, Babylon, From Babylon to Timbuktu. There's a difference. In fact, a true African calls the Negro Kata, which means cotton picker, man. So when the so-called white man came over to Africa, and they say, oh, Africans sold other Africans into slavery. No, man. The Hamites sold the Israelites into slavery. And they knew there was a difference because we was keeping our laws, man. Just like if you was to go down to Manhattan, you could separate the so-called Jew from an average so-called white man because they have different customs. It was the same thing with us, man. We kept the borders of blue. We had beards, all right? We didn't eat certain things, so they know who to come after. Which all that did was fulfill Joel, the 3rd chapter, because we fled in Africa, all right, to flee persecution from the Roman Empire in 70 AD, parts of Africa, all right? Just like how the Northern Kingdom, the Latin tribes, they fled Jerusalem and migrated over to the Americas, all right, during the time of the Assyrian diaspora. When the Assyrians came over there to deport them, a lot of them fled that, man. So the so-called Native Americans, and Native Indians of the West Indies, the West Indian Islands, which the word Indian just means savage. West Indian is not your national. Indian is not your nationality, or Native American is not your national. No, you're Gadites, man. You're what else, man? You're Ephraimites, you're Simeonites, you're Issacharites, man. True nationalities according to the Bible. Asherites. Okay. People of Naphtali. All the people along was that the North America, South America region. All right. True inhabitants of that land, the indigenous people of that land, go back to Israel, man. We fled over here, all right, as it says in the book of Kings, man. Okay, so these nations been amongst us, and all that did was fulfill prophecy. So the Bible just lets you know that, look, you got enemies, man, and these enemies are going to come together and do different things to destroy you as a people. Okay, so beware the traps and nets of the so-called white man. Ecclesiasticus 12:10. Never trust thine enemy, for like as iron rusteth, so is his wickedness. And iron is bound to rust, man. There ain't no such thing as a so-called good white man, man. And I gotta put so-called because that's commonly called white. All right, because this thing is beyond skin color, man. This is not a skin color thing. All right, it's Edomites. Because what you have so-called people of the Latin tribes that they might be, white blonde hair. All right, but we're not dealing with no skin color. We're dealing with nationalities. But as a whole, Edom is commonly red. The Romans, the Greeks, all right, which they adopted those names from different people. All right, the true Romans and Greeks are Japhetic people, so-called Hawaiians and Polynesians today. But they stole their nationality. Okay. So, I mean, they call themselves all different types of shit, but they're not gonna call themselves Edom, Esau. You put in Esau, Edom in Microsoft Word, a red line will come under it, like saying, "Oh, this word doesn't exist." It says, "Never trust thine enemy, for like as iron rusteth, so is his wickedness." So iron is bound to rust. Iron is bound to oxidize. So just like iron is bound to oxidize, this man is bound to do wickedness, man. So whatever type of health relief and this benefit, that benefit, we're going to do this to benefit you, there's something nefarious behind it, man. Primarily to you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, because as a whole, again, in a broader sense, our people are the poor. All right, we're the poor in the society. All right, you do have certain jakes that sell out, that's up in there, whatever, or you might have jakes that so-called just succeeded in the society, whatever. But that's few and far between. As a whole, our people are the poor. You know, it says, though he humble himself and go crouching, yet take good heed and beware of him. Because that's how they supplanted the Native American so-called Gadites with these different treaties and, we here to do this and that for you and 5,000 treaties and didn't keep not one, man. They came over here, rape, robbed, and murder. St. John 10 and 10, the thief cometh not but to steal and to kill. They came over here, rape, robbed, and murdered, and took your land, man, from you. And gave you some damn so-called reservations, man. And guess what they did on the reservations? Pumped it with welfare and destroyed the hell out of it, man. You're so-called below the poverty line, you so-called Native Americans, man. You're below the poverty line. It says, though he humble himself and go crouching, yet take good heed and beware of him. And thou shalt be unto him as if thou had wiped a looking glass. So back in the ancient world, the mirrors or the looking glass, all right, was made out of brass. Okay, they didn't have glass mirrors back then. So to see yourself, you'd have to wipe it. You had to shine it, right? So the scriptures are saying, thou shalt be unto him if thou had wiped a looking glass, and thou shalt know that his rust has not been altogether wiped away. Because you can't truly wipe away, you had the looking glass made of brass. Eventually, it's going to always rust, man. No matter how much you shine it, it's going to rust. So no matter how much you inspect this man, you check out his deeds, you start to check out his contract, you say, holy shit, wait a minute, there's some wickedness in this shit, man. Oh, $2,000 a month, $1,200 stimulus. When you go all into that bill, you find out, look, man, that ain't to benefit you, man. That's to create a larger wealth gap between rich and poor. All right. And they want to keep this lockdown thing going to further different agendas, man. Okay, and they divided amongst it. These Egyptians are divided amongst themselves, man. All right, because you got the Democrats, they're using this lockdown situation against this dude Trump, man. With the lockdown, driving down markets and 6 feet apart, you can't do rallies and you can't boast and so-called high stock market, high this, high that. We're doing good, so they're using that as leverage, man. And that way you don't have to do any debates with Sleepy Joe. But as a whole, on a bigger scale, they wiping out the so-called middle class. That's done away with, man. They doing every different government. Anytime you see stuff to rely more on the government, that's what that does. That wipes away entrepreneurship, man. And if you want to maintain your business, guess what? You're gonna have to open up at leverage. You're gonna have to open up at debt. You had this one Jake, I didn't read too much in the article, but what he did was he petitioned for that PPP loan. He got it. He was like, yo, you got 157 employees, man. They got to eat. They gave him like 3.1 million, and that nigga went and bought Rolls Royce, all types of chains, paid off 40,000 child support, So even amongst that, you have Jakes that are fucking other Jakes over, man. Yeah, so pretty much that was just a quick lesson, man. Never trust your enemy. Whatever this man try to prescribe to you, you got to look at that thing with a magnifying glass. You got to read the fine print within the fine print. Because as a whole, this man is never going to do anything beneficial for you Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, and stop having false hope in the so-called white man. Because his other end is destruction, all right? And the book of Micah 2 and 10 says, depart out of this shithole, man. Do what you got to do to get by, again. But, man, you entangle yourself with the so-called white man contracts, man. Ultimately, you're going to be slated. It's a pit, man. It's a trap. It's a jinn. So with that, I'm going to give all praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashim Yahushai, Ba'ashim Rakakodash, the blessings to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone True Well, and salutation to the hopeful elect out there. You Akim to Sadakim that do this thing in the utmost truth and sincerity. Shalom.